Okay, we are back. Going to do more of Socrates in Plato's Apology. Once more, Plato wrote it. It's called the Apology, and it's about the life of Socrates. One quick note, I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but apology doesn't mean apology. Once you finish this reading, you'll see that Socrates is not giving an apology for his life. He's proud of the life that he leads and has specific reasons he can recommend it to others. Apology, the old word apology, apologia, just means a defense. And that's literally what Socrates is doing. He's defending himself against charges. And it's also more sort of metaphorically what he's doing. He's defending the practice of philosophy and justifying it as valuable. So not an apology, but a self-defense. Okay. So let's get further into it. We're now really moving page 2 onto 3 now that we've got the context out of the way. Okay. The people of Socrates is talking to a jury here, right? There are a number of people who are going to decide if he's guilty or innocent. Okay. And what he's saying here is that he says, I bet you the jury have this question. Socrates, if you're not guilty of these charges, then why have you been charged with them? You've got to be guilty of something similar to the charges, probably, or else you wouldn't have gotten brought in here on these charges, right? And Socrates says, there is a reason, you're right, there is a reason why I've been charged with these crimes, okay? And then he gets into what those reasons are, and they're sort of surprising. Just so you know, it's in the reading, but it's a little confusing. The charges against Socrates include talking about things in the sky and below the earth, corrupting the youth, and making the worst argument appear to be the stronger. Okay, I know that sounds weird. And you're thinking, these are crimes? The crimes are basically this. Talking about the sky and below the earth means that Socrates is prying into things which are not his business. He's asking questions that can't be answered or that he doesn't need the answers to. Okay? That's what the first one means. Okay? The second one, that he makes the weaker argument appear the stronger, means that he has very controversial ideas, very unique ideas that he's sharing with people, and seeming to contradict what other people think and say. So he appears to say that things are good that other people don't think are good. And then the third one, corrupting the youth or teaching others these things, is basically the first two together. You're asking questions that you shouldn't. You're saying that good is bad and up is down, and then you're teaching this to the kids, so they're getting this same kind of bunk from you. Now, I know this seems to be a funny thing to be brought up on charges for, but think about it. There's some countries where owning certain books, that's illegal. There are some countries where if you don't wear a certain article of clothing in public, especially if you're a woman, that's illegal. There's all sorts of things that in certain times and places are made illegal. And remember what I said before in the context. These are just trumped up charges. His enemies are mad at him because of stuff in the past. They're trying to find something in the present that they can find some law about and punish him for that instead. Okay? So the charges are very strange, but that's basically what it is. People think that he's spreading misinformation that's ruining the city. So we can sort of sum them up, like I said, in corrupting the youth. His weird, bad way of life, his unusual ideas are getting into the young guys, and that's going to ruin the city. So Socrates says, I do not corrupt the youth. I do not speak of things below the earth. I do not make the worse argument the stronger. But there is a reason why these charges have been brought against me rather than other ones. they're sort of like the inverted opposite version of what he actually does. So he says, there is a reason why these charges were brought against me. He basically says this. He says, look, I'm a weirdo. I know it. I'm unusual. I don't fit into Athens. I'm unlike most of the rest of you. So what that means is people have been gossiping about me, giggling about me for years. Okay, so people have been gossiping and trash talking about me, Socrates, for years. Then what happens is these people, Meletus, Lycon, and Antinous, they're my enemies, and they latch onto the gossip that the people in general were already saying about me, and they've turned that gossip into a malicious weapon. Okay, they're using the trash talking that other people talk about me because I'm a weirdo in order to bring me down. Now remember, for Socrates and for everything in our class, everything he says should connect to other things he's said. If he's going to be consistent, one idea he says in the middle of the dialogue needs to fit with other parts of the reading. And if they don't, maybe he's contradicting himself and he's wrong. So the point is, for this to be non-contradictory, which we'll talk about later, it has to fit with other thing he's saying. Philosophy always wants different parts of a single book or a single author to fit together. What that means is when you read something in the book that seems weird and doesn't make sense, think about other things you've read. It probably connects directly back to something else earlier in the reading. And then the two ideas will mutually support each other. This is what Socrates is implying here. He says, people ask, why would you be charged with a crime if you didn't do the crime? If you at least didn't do something similar? And he said, I have done something similar to the crime. Not anything illegal or wrong, but something similar to the crime. I do talk to the youth. I do tell them ideas that other people don't know. But he says, I'm a harmless weirdo. I'm not harming the kids. I'm just having interesting conversations with them. But this is what passes for knowledge. Remember what we said in the beginning? That persuasion and the truth are not the same thing. Socrates is saying, the jury has been persuaded by living in this society, by everyone else, that I'm a weirdo. That's been the gossip going around for years. That's persuasion, though. It's not the truth. Now I'm being brought into court, and you're going to use persuasion or gossip against me in court. We need to find the truth in this room today and not rely on past gossip of what someone told someone else. Mere persuasion, that's not the truth. So Socrates says, I can explain where this idea came from. And he both explains it and then gives an example of it. The explanation is about the oracle at Delphi. The example of it is when he cross-examines Meletus. So if you want to know how Socrates works and what his mission is, what guided his life, you get sort of the origin with the god at Delphi, the oracle at Delphi, and you get the current manifestation and practice when he cross-examines Meletus, which is pages 6 to 9 in this reading. Once more, all of this stuff is connected. That's how philosophy works, is that the first part of this reading in some way supports or is supported by the middle part. The middle part somehow supports or is supported by later parts, all the way in a circle. The end should help explain the beginning. The beginning should help explain the end. So always keep that in mind when Socrates seems to say something outlandish and hard to believe, which he does regularly. Think about other things he said and try to see which ones fit and support each other. That will help you understand. Once more, Socrates says, it is false that I am ruining the children with lies, but I do know where this gossip came from. Here's something very interesting about Socrates, but It's another time and place, so it's a little hard to understand in our context. Around page 3, he says, in our religion, the ancient religion that he and everyone else practiced, they had certain oracles. These oracles, you could ask a question, and priests who would speak with knowledge of the gods would give you an oracle or sort of a fortune. And basically, they were never wrong. They were never wrong. They were somehow tapped into the truth of things. And if you ask the oracle at Delphi is just a place, a question, it always gave you a true answer. So one of Socrates' friends asked the oracle at Delphi. He said, side note, I just picture his friend. In the longer version of this, I cut things so that you don't have to read quite as much. He talks about how bold and brash his friend is. I just sort of picture his friend sort of getting drunk and blurting out, when he was walking by the oracle. This is the question he asked the oracle. You're not really supposed to ask things this directly, but he did. And he said, is anyone wiser than my wise friend Socrates? And the oracle said, no one is wiser than Socrates. No one is wiser than Socrates. Now, Socrates is this funny mixture of modesty and arrogance. Remember before when I said, hey, when I point out that just because you personally are persuaded of something doesn't mean that you're right. I said, don't take that in the negative way, but take it in the positive way. Don't take it as, oh, the professor or Socrates thinks that I'm dumb or wrong. No. Take it in the sense of, you already have some of the truth. Let's see if you can get even more of the truth. Socrates does that himself in this way that plays this interesting mix of modesty and humility with what sounds like arrogance. Socrates is genuinely humble. He says, there are plenty of things which I don't know. So he says, the gods always speak the truth, but this can't be true. I can't be the wisest. There's all sorts of stuff. Modestly and humbly, I will admit, there's lots of stuff that I don't understand. I don't know. So he says, it's got to be true, but I don't know how it could be true. So he went around. This is where the gossip against Socrates comes from. He went around asking people who said they knew about things. He asked them what the truth was. But Socrates would see when he talked to them. You can see this on page 3 and 4. He says, every time I talked to someone, I would end up finding out that something they claimed they knew, they couldn't explain. Or I'd ask them to explain something and they clearly said two opposite things that can't both be true. So he'd catch people not quite lying, but contradicting themselves. They'd say they know and then show they didn't know. Or they'd know a fact about something and then they would also affirm the opposite fact about the same thing. So this is what Socrates says. In his modesty and humility, he says, I cannot be smarter than everyone else. It's not possible. Then he goes around and asks people. He asks politicians. He asks creative artist types. Content creators, we'd call them today. And he asks people who are skilled in industry and technology, what are called craftspeople here. He talks to everyone, okay? And every time someone claims they know about something important, they would show somehow that they didn't know about it. Not so much that they're lying, usually, but that they're ignorant about things they claim to know about. That's why people dislike Socrates. That's why people gossip and trash talk Socrates. Because he shows that certain things are not as obvious as they seem. That certain so-called experts are only called experts because the rest of us don't know either. But the experts don't always know what's going on either. Now, if I tell you that your enemy doesn't know what she or he is talking about, you'll pat me on the back, you'll buy me a beer. We're thick as thieves. But if I, in public, because Socrates' questions always happened in public. If I in public go up to a politician and prove to the audience that they don't know what they're talking about, have I made a friend or an enemy of that politician? I've made an enemy. If I go to a titan of industry, a real genius about business, and I show that they lose money, that they don't know what they're talking about, that their employees do all the important work and they don't know how the company's run, do I make a friend or an enemy out of that rich business person? I make an enemy. So Socrates, in order to display his humility and humbleness, humility and humbleness, same thing, his modesty, went around to see if the God's vision was actually true, if that he was the wisest. Now, he started out not believing the oracle, I can't possibly be the wisest, and then he ended up believing it at the end. And this is what appears to be arrogance in Socrates, but is actually just his modesty displayed a different way. Okay? This is what he says. He says, this is what the God means. You see this on page 5. Okay? He says, the God doesn't mean that I'm literally smarter than everyone else or that I know everything. What the God means is that I am not worse off than anyone else, because the worst way to be in relationship to knowledge is to think you know something but be wrong about it. Okay? To think you know and to actually know is the best. To not know, but to know that you don't know is the second best. The worst is to think you know when you don't know. So I'll say that again. The worst is to think you know about a topic and to actually be ignorant or wrong about that topic. That's the worst. Much better is to not know about a topic, but to know and tell other people that you don't know about that topic. The very best would be to know about a topic and know you know it and tell everyone about it. Now, Socrates says, I'm not the very best. I don't know about everything. But at least I'm not the very worst, thinking I know about stuff that I'm actually unaware of. So he says, I'm the wisest because I'm in that middle. No one's perfectly wise and knows everything, which would be the top. At least I'm not at the bottom. But he says, basically everyone I talked to is at the bottom. They were all famous for knowing stuff and didn't know it. Now, I want you to stop and think about what has happened here. He talks to people who are supposed to be experts in things that he doesn't know. And he claims that he's shown that they don't know about the topic. But remember, we just said he admits he doesn't know about the topic. Your mind should be spinning here. Add all these ideas up, and what should be the next idea that occurs to you? He's talking to them about a topic that neither of them understand. He knows that they don't understand it. You should be asking, wait a second, how does he know what they do and don't understand when he admits he's no expert in this topic either? Here's how. Okay, do you see the point I'm trying to make? He claims that that he knows when other people are ignorant in their field of expertise. You should be saying, well, he's not an expert in that field. How the heck can he know who knows and who doesn't? Here's how. It's a method you could apply to any domain, whether you're an expert, a novice, or ignorant of it. If someone says about any topic that it is and it ain't the same way, they cannot be speaking the truth. Okay, you can't say something is and is not a certain way. You can't say it is good and is not good in the same way and have both be true. Okay? You can't say that I'm your favorite teacher ever and that I'm your least favorite teacher ever. Maybe one student in class I'm their favorite teacher and another one I'm their least favorite teacher. But you personally can't say that today in class I am proving myself to be your least favorite teacher ever and your favorite teacher ever. The two things are opposites, right? One could be true and not the other. or the other could be true but not the first, or neither could be true. Maybe I'm your second favorite professor ever. I'd take it. But they can't both be true because they're opposites. I can't be bald and have a full head of hair on the same day. Right? I can't be short and tall at the same point in my life. So I genuinely say ain't there just to sort of catch your attention, right? You can't be and not be the same thing at the same time. It's impossible, and it doesn't matter whether you're talking astrophysics, being a military general, being a content creator, being an athlete, etc. It is impossible for something to be and not be the same way at the same time. So that's Socrates' general method. And that's part of the Socratic method. It's part of how lawyers cross-examine people. And it's part of a way that you can find sense in new topics as a philosopher. Because yes, I think you are a philosopher. It's how you can find sense in as a philosopher in new topics, even if you're not an expert in them yet. Certain ideas do not add up. Something can't be and not be in the same way at the same time. It's impossible. So that's how Socrates can talk to generals and ask the generals if they know. Asking if the generals really know, asking the artists, the craftspeople if they really know. Okay? If the general says the army is red and not red at the same time, if he says they are well-equipped and not well-equipped at the same time, whatever. Two opposites can't be in the same thing at the same time. Okay? And that's how Socrates works through his questions. He'll assume anything you say is true and accurate until you also affirm the opposite. Then one of them has to go. Okay? They can't both be true. Okay. It's sort of a simple method, you see. It's simple, and it's how he can apply his knowledge even to things he's not an expert in, okay? Now, you might be saying, okay, fine. He can tell the general that the general doesn't know. He can tell the artist that the artist doesn't know. Why exactly does he need to do this, though? Why exactly does he need to run around questioning people? Well, first, remember, the gods told him that he was the wisest. So he felt he had to figure out what they mean. It's not very pious or religious, right? If the gods tell you something and you just ignore it. So he tried to act on the information that the oracle had given him. Okay, that's the first part. It's sort of a sacred duty. Second, Socrates personally loves truth. We'll get into that in the second half of the reading. Okay, he loves truth. That's what philosophy means, actually. It means love of wisdom. Philo means love. So philanthropy means love of humanity. That's where the phil comes from. Okay, and sophos means wisdom. Okay, so the philosopher is the lover of wisdom. That's the second reason why he has to run around questioning people. He loves the truth so much that if you might know something true, he's going to talk to you about it. Okay, that's the second reason. Third, don't you personally hope that your city, your state, your general region, you know, the Midwest, if you live by Ball State, and your nation, don't you want to know for sure that those who are in charge actually can do what they say they can do? That they know actually what they claim to know? Think about how long presidential campaigns go on. Years and years. And we have primaries before we even get to the presidential election. All this stuff. Why? So that we can see people speak in public. We let them speak long enough in public to give them a chance to either say the same thing consistently or to contradict themselves and show us that they don't know or believe what they claim to know and believe. Okay? So, once more, Socrates himself, he isn't running around questioning people to make them look dumb. He thinks it's a task, a sacred task. He also personally loves the truth, so he's not trying to find other people to be wrong. He's trying to find them to be right so he can learn from them. But if he finds out they're wrong, well, that's the way it works. Third, he and me, and probably you, think that those in public who claim that they are doing a service for us as fellow citizens, I want to make sure they actually know what they're talking about. I don't want to take it on trust. Do you trust these politicians? Come on. I don't want to take it on trust. I want them to prove it to me. Okay? So, just to wrap this up, people talk trash about Socrates because he embarrasses them. He only embarrasses them because really they've already embarrassed themselves, and he just lets the cat out of the bag. Okay? So he's not the one who embarrasses them. He's not the one who shows them to be wrong. He's just the messenger. Okay? And you know what they say? Don't kill the messenger. Okay? He only asks people to tell him the truth about things that they have publicly proclaimed they know the truth about. Right? So all he's trying to do is show that in public, people with public responsibilities do or don't know what they're talking about, and that our leaders are either lying to us or telling the truth to us. That's it. Now, we all know that shouldn't make people mad at him, but you can definitely see why they would not tolerate this too well, right? And that's exactly what happened. So remember, I told you everything in this reading is connected. It's true of all philosophy. Everything in this reading is connected. So what I just told you was the origin of Socrates getting in trouble. Now what we're going to have is the present moment of Socrates in trouble. He's going to talk to and cross-examine one of his accusers. Okay? The same way, Socrates was explaining his past. This is what he did in the past. The god told him he was the wisest, so he went to test this claim. He wanted to make sure that was true. He did that by cross-examining people in public to see if they knew what they said they knew. Now he's going to cross-examine Meletus in public, in the jury proceedings, the court proceedings, to see if Meletus knows what he's talking about. So like I said, anything that wasn't clear in what he says about the oracle at Delphi, look to what he says about Meletus to clarify it. Anything he says to Meletus, use both to clarify each other is all I mean. Also, do the same thing to Socrates that he does to other people. If you find him contradicting himself, tell us. Put it in the discussion board or email me about it and you and I can talk about it. Because if Socrates is contradicting himself, he's no better than you, me, Meletus, or anybody else. If he says that something is and ain't at the same time, he's got to be wrong. Let's hold him to account. But if not, if everything he says is self-consistent and non-self-contradictory, then he's probably telling the truth. Okay, so we're about to wrap it up. We've got one last point to make, and it's about Meletus as an example of Socrates' questioning method, his Socratic method, his interrogation. Okay, so remember, Meletus, among other things, has charged Socrates with corrupting the youth. And Socrates says, okay, let's see if this can be true. He says, Meletus, if you are charging someone with corrupting the youth, you must care about the youth, correct? He agrees. And he then says, okay, if you care about the youth, about what corrupts them, you surely must know who corrupts them and who benefits them. And he says, yes, of course. Okay. Now, just something to notice here. This is another general philosophical method. It's another method that you can use when you're trying to get to the truth. Most ideas somehow link up to other ideas. They connect, or they produce other ideas, or if you believe one idea, you sort of have to believe another idea. Remember when I said before, if you believe the idea just because someone is persuaded or believes something doesn't mean they necessarily have the truth. And then I ask you, well, apply that to yourself. Just because you're persuaded doesn't necessarily mean you have the truth, right? Okay, that's how one idea can connect to another, or how one idea can be applied to generate other true ideas. Okay, what we see here, top of page 7, it happens very fast. I'm pointing it out because it's not obvious. But Socrates says, if you know what improves young people, you should know what corrupts them. And if you know what corrupts them, you should know what improves them. Basically, in general, if you know what's good for something, that can tell you what's bad for something. Does that make sense? Doctors don't just study medicines that cure, right? They study diseases as well. Athletes don't just lift weights to get stronger and learn how to do that to get stronger. They also learn how to avoid injury, right? So in general, just a general point, if you know what's good for something, in general, you'll know what's bad for that same thing, right? Also, if you don't know what improves something, you might not know what corrupts it or ruins it. Does that make sense? Okay, we'll get back into the question and answer now. Socrates says, if you're charging someone with corrupting the youth, you must care about the youth. Correct. If you care about what corrupts the youth, you must know what corrupts the youth. Correct. Well, if you know what corrupts the youth, you must know what improves the youth, the opposite, the related idea. Correct. Okay. All these things seem obviously true. All of them seem to add up. So then he says, okay, Melodus, if you care about the youth, you must know both what improves them and corrupts them. And he goes, correct. So he says, who corrupts the youth? There's details in here that you've read. And Melodus goes, only you, Socrates. And he says, okay, who improves the youth? Everyone else, everyone but Socrates. And Socrates goes, well, damn. He says, okay, I hope that's not true. Now he says, again, related ideas. We're talking about taking young children and training them up to be strong women and men, right? Strong, smart, capable. And he says, don't horse trainers do something similar? They take young colts, I suppose, young horses. They train them to be smart, to listen to commands, to be capable. Doesn't there seem to be some connection between training youth and training horses? Some connection between improving children into adults and improving young horses into adult capable horses. It seems to be that these are related questions, right? And he says, okay, is it also true for horses that only one person ruins them and everyone else improves them or helps train them and educate them? No. The opposite is true. So it probably stands to reason that if only one person is an expert in making horses better, making them smarter, stronger, etc., that only one or a few people are experts in raising children, educating them, making them smarter, stronger. And in fact, that does seem to be the case. Only a few people are given the trust and capacity to make people better, whether it's coaches making athletes better, whether it's teachers making students better, whether it's experts in a field passing their knowledge on to other people. It's not that everybody's an expert in everything. I don't know how to raise horses, only the horse expert does. So once more, Socrates adds all these ideas up. And remember, they're all things that his opponent either agrees with or has to agree with because they just make perfect sense. He says, you don't know who improves and who corrupts the youth, because what you said is the opposite of what you said about horses. It's similar to raising children, And you've said the opposite. You said in one case, only a few improve. In the other case, you say only a great many improve. You gave no reason for the discrepancy. So you've said two opposite things. This also proves the opposite of what you said before. You said you care about something, and to care about something, the youth, one has to know something about the youth. You've just shown that you don't know anything about the youth because you said two opposite things. You said they are improved by everyone, and also that they can only be improved by a few rare people. So he's shown very specific things Socrates has. He's shown that Meletus does not know how to improve the youth, nor how the youth are corrupted. Therefore, he has also shown that Meletus does not know that Socrates corrupts the youth, because he doesn't know anything about the corruption of the youth. Therefore, Socrates has also shown that he is not guilty of corrupting the youth, and he details that with some more information there. So that's very detailed, right? Let's take a step back and try to remember why we should care about this. Socrates is dead. This guy Meletus is dead. All the children we're talking about, the people they're trying to educate, are dead. Why should you and I care about this? We should care about this because we can both learn how to do philosophy from this, and we can learn about the value of philosophy. Philosophy has shown its value here because it can unmask people who don't say what they mean, and it can unmask people who say what they mean but are mistaken about what they're persuaded about. It can unmask mistakes when people want to know but don't know, and it can unmask liars like Meletus who don't know and deliberately lie and pretend they do. That's part of the value of philosophy, is that even when you're not sure about something, it gives you methods for questioning yourself and others. Methods for questioning yourself and others, which can lead you closer to the truth and away from error. So that shows you what philosophy is. It's a method. It also shows you something about philosophy, that maybe philosophy is a lot better than it seems. Because remember what happens to poor Socrates here. Exactly by asking these sorts of questions, exactly by spending his life trying to know the truth and talking to others about it, that led to gossip and trash talking that eventually led to charges which brought him to this court. He is paying the price for asking these questions. If he doesn't ask these questions, though, people like Meletus will lie to us. They will lie right to our faces. And other people, more innocent, will try to tell us the truth and try to help us, but they won't know. They will get corruption and improvement completely mixed together. Now, I don't want to listen to the person who thinks they know but confuses opposites: ignorance and truth, corruption and improvement. And I certainly don't want to listen to the liar like Meletus. Socrates can help us sort out the difference. But remember, if you do this, people will mock you. They will say, "What are you going to do with that major? Do you want fries with that?" But you're strong, you're independent. You don't need other people telling you what you should do with your life. Just know that philosophy is not going to be the popular route. It can get you into trouble like it got Socrates into trouble. Okay? Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, I know you want a discussion question. I love reading the discussions, so I'm genuinely excited. I bet some of you are as well. Here's the discussion question. Socrates got into trouble. He literally got dragged into court. This is a true story. Because he wanted to know the truth, and in public he asked for who knows the truth and showed when people didn't. Okay? Can you think of examples of people who have been harmed, who have lost something by publicly asking for the truth? Can you think of examples, whether fictional or real, past or present, who have asked for truth or told truth in public and were somehow punished or harmed or had to sacrifice something for that public quest for truth? Okay? So again, here's the question. Who can you think of, fictional or real, past or present, who has somehow paid a price for the truth, who had to bravely speak up the truth and it cost them something? Okay, so I'm really looking forward to hearing your examples from that. We are now done with this portion of Plato's Apology. Okay, thank you, everyone.